And joining me in studio to further unpack the story is political analyst Tshepo Khadima. Always welcome, Tshepo. Nice to have you. And of course, this kind of reporting, it's something that we've highlighted before, that the source-based allegations and malicious reporting is really irresponsible. I mean, what do you make of the latest allegations, a tagline that's added on now about money laundering and not having a paper trail for the cash?
Look, I think what we are seeing is a continued onslaught on a company, an enterprise, for a whole host of other reasons that are not yet clear as to what is the end game and what is the ultimate motive in this. But I've looked in detail the report as it appeared in the Sunday Times of yesterday, and a subsequent report that was, I think, on their online paper. Certainly, this does not help the situation. As we stand here today, I find that it is really more of a diversion from the key important issue, which I think myself and a number of other analysts and observers maintain that the initial decision, which was done in concert in what I maintain was a collusive manner, against the provisions of the Competition Act to close the Oakbay accounts. We maintain, myself and I think a number of others, that was both unconstitutional as well as unlawful. And as we sit here today, for as long as that unconstitutional and unlawful decision to close the bank accounts without due process of a company, and in this case being Oakbay, the harm and the infringement perpetuates. And most certainly, I think we should not lose sight of that issue needs to be resolved. The story as it appeared for me, it starts to really, I think, highlight the juniorization of journalism in South Africa, whereby stories appear without asking the hard questions. And I would be happy at any day to have a debate with the writers of that story, because there are a number of facts that have been left out. For example, Bank of Baroda is not a full-service bank in South Africa in terms as licensed under the Banks Act. It therefore would not be possible that Bank of Baroda can offer the services that Oakbay companies, in this case, had been enjoying with the previous banks that have taken that unlawful and unconstitutional decision. So with Bank of Baroda not being a full-service bank in terms of our laws, I can't see how anybody would have expected that in any shape or form they can replace. Now, the allegation that maybe because the monies were deposited into, on behalf of Oakbay-linked companies in Bank of Baroda, and there is not an onward movement of that monies. If there was any outward transfer, that will be termed a reportable transaction. And it is important to bear in mind that in South Africa, on a daily basis, there is billions of rands that come in and out of the country. And all of those transactions, all those transfers in and out are reportable to the Reserve Bank, whereby any transaction that there is suspicion that perhaps it might be part of a money laundering activity or any unlawful activity or not duly authorized, the Reserve Bank would most certainly put a stop to such a transfer. And that is not what has been alleged in this case.
But I mean, the Sunday Times went ahead with the story saying that the Oakbay Investment Holdings is under investigation by the Reserve Bank and the Financial Services Center, and yet the Reserve Bank has refuted this. I mean, again, the level of reporting, as you're saying, that if there's one press statement that is making the rounds. I remember in the days of the South African Press Association, that was a portal of where everybody essentially got their news gathering from in different categories, be it business, Africa, etc. And that is exactly how this thing would be duplicated or regurgitated from one newsroom to the next print as well. So maybe we need to look at the source exactly of where the story originates from.
Look, the story certainly as it appears I maintain that it is defamatory on Bank of Baroda. And I would be surprised if Bank of Baroda just left it where it is, because there's an allegation that they have somewhat been part of an unlawful activity, which might be of a criminal nature. And that is certainly defamatory. But on the other hand, when one looks at the story itself, it says, what is that really newsworthy? Is that something that should have occupied the front page of what would have been a respectable publication such as the Sunday Times? And I think the management of Sunday Times, the editors, as well as the publishers, they need to start asking themselves the hard questions, that are they really doing that which I think would have been expected of any responsible media organization? That story is irresponsible. And more so when you look at it, the Financial Intelligence Center would investigate to the extent that the bank in question would have reported a transaction that they suspect. I'll give you an example. In this country, an ordinary citizen, if I went into the bank tomorrow and deposited 25,000 rand in cash, the bank will then be required to report that to the Financial Intelligence Center. However, if I'm a business, a supermarket, for example, any of the large chains of supermarkets that would rather deposit in cash amounts of maybe more than R1 million a day, those are not reportable transactions, because it is in the ordinary course of business that they would handle cash.
All right, maybe you need to just unpack what money laundering means exactly, because in this case, the allegation is that there's money moving into the Bank of Baroda and that money is not moving. So that is problematic. You know, my understanding of money laundering is that this is ill-gained money that has to be cleansed, if you will, and it makes the rounds a couple of times before it gets to, you know, there's a degree of separation between who receives the money, the beneficiary, and the depositor.
Look, that certainly is correct, you know, in terms of how you define money laundering. The issue here is that with the money that they allege was deposited into Bank of Baroda and has not moved from thereof, just a casual look on Bank of Baroda's website, some of the products and services that they offer is term deposits, whereby you can put money on deposit at a fixed interest over a period of time. So the article itself does not tell us on whether or not this was a term deposit. And in fact, when you look at it, Bank of Baroda can actually only do a term deposits because they are not a full service bank. So they are not able. The reason why the money didn't move is because they are not a full service bank. Therefore, they cannot do the daily transactions that you would do with any of the 4 banks that have taken that unlawful decision to close the accounts of Oakbay.
So the expectation was that once the banks had closed the Oakbay accounts, that the businesses would cease to exist. In other words, you're being squeezed out of the market to a point where you have nowhere else to turn. You know, because it's not a lack of insolvency or, you know, lack of operational expertise or whether business is suffering here. It's really about just having the facilities, banking facilities that have been denied. Yeah,
look, I maintain that closing a bank account of a duly established, duly registered business or company is liquidation by stealth. And for me, you know, barring any other explanation from the banks, it would appear that this was a concerted effort to close down the Oakbay group of companies by shutting down or denying them of banking facilities. And that certainly is unlawful. But now we're seeing that because that seems not to have worked, the diversion continues, the onslaught on Oakbay continues, whereby now there are even allegations, so that there is undue pressure, in my opinion, that is being put on any other company that is seen to be closed or doing any business of any kind or offering any service of any kind to Oakbay, that they too should be dissuaded from offering such. And we've seen this even in the area of the auditors. That KPMG, which had been an auditor of Oakbay for 16 years or so, that they themselves issued a press statement to the effect that they were put under undue pressure and they will certainly have lost a lot more business. What remains unanswered is that, well, Who is that entity? Who is that person who put this undue pressure? And what business were they threatened that would be taken away from them in the event they continued? And certainly, I think there's much more bigger questions that need to be answered. And this story goes far beyond just Oakbay as a company. It brings us into a level whereby in this country, there's going to be decisions that are arbitrary, that are not according to the conscripts of the law, not adhering to the rule of law. But those decisions, if they are allowed to carry through, most certainly I think we should start lamenting and seeing that this country is going down a slippery slope.
Okay, what should happen next, particularly with the Reserve Bank? They refuted the allegations that Oakbay Investment Holdings are under investigations, and particularly from Baroda. Is this a story that you think will blow away, or will there be another bone to pick next Sunday?
I can't see any basis upon which the Reserve Bank would have been investigating based on what has been reported. There is absolutely no. And also with the Financial Intelligence Center, I can't see any reason why they would have been investigating any story, because if their investigation is based on what the Democratic Alliance referred to when they wrote to the Reserve Bank and requesting that they investigate, I would really be surprised, because now the Financial Intelligence Center would be struggling in the land of politics, which is not their domain to do. What needs to be asked and what needs to be attended to is saying that, are we as South Africans, companies or juristic and non-juristic persons, are we able to operate banking facilities in this country without the fear that somewhere, somehow, somebody might make a decision that it is going to infringe upon our constitutional rights in all spheres? Yeah, and I think that is the more serious question that we need to be attending to.
Yeah, just the reputational damage again, considering that Oakbay Investment Holdings essentially is a lone voice, with only have the platform of ANN7 and the New Age to respond, and they've, they reluctantly have done so, but it's just become so inundated with the negativity that somehow there's a reaction from the company itself. How much damage does this do in a sea of public opinion that seems to think everything they read is correct, in fact?
Yeah, I think that is the unfortunate thing, that there's lack of scrutiny and analysis on what is being published. And the print media, particularly in this case, and most unfortunately, the newspapers such as the Sunday Times and City Press have over and over again come out with stories that could not be defended or could not be corroborated or legally sustained with objective facts. And that, for me, is what is lamentable, that we find that our press is not acting responsibly. And I can authoritatively speak on this matter because I too have suffered under those publications whereby, in fact, when you take them to court, you find that they get stuck. They are not able to move an inch further. They are not able to produce evidence. And they know this. And I know that what I'm saying, they will agree that it is not personal, but they know that I'm telling the truth. Where should we go from here? I think it is important that maybe a platform such as ANN7, as well as other progressive media out there, should take a wider look into this matter, because you'll find that it's not only Oakbay that is a victim of this type of unlawful conduct at the hands of the banks. If you look at the whole financial services sector, you'll find that there are numerous cases whereby people's rights have been violated and their accounts or their mortgages or their car finances have really been dealt in a manner that is not correct.
Khadima, thanks so much, as always. Appreciate your insight. We're speaking to Tsepo Khadima, a political analyst, talking about the latest developments in the newspaper headlines regarding the Oakbay accounts and all other nuances that are implied there. You're most welcome to join us on Twitter, and that's at ANN7 TV. Now